What is up, everybody? This is Jeremy for our All Things Music podcast, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Daphne. How are you today, Daphne?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm good. I am doing pretty good.
I'll bet
School
you
year
are.
is wrapping up. Yeah, I know, right? School year is wrapping up for both of us, and the winding down of all the curriculum and the testing. That's good. The students are starting to ask for all their homework that they did not do all semester. That's bad.
Yeah.
PSA, do your work when it's assigned to you as best you can.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
Please, instead of waiting till the last minute so that it's not all these last-minute emails trying to fix it all.
That's right, because it seems to be getting better, I hope. I don't know. Maybe this generation of kids, sound like an old man now, are getting a little bit better. But I could be totally wrong. It just could be a good year for me, which happens. So
yeah, I don't know. Mine are just kind of chilling. We'll see what happens after we're approaching Memorial Day weekend, and so we'll see what happens. And we've got 2 days after Memorial here where we work, so we'll see what happens in those 2 days. I almost hesitate to make any predictions or anything in case something changes.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to jinx it. Oh, my gosh.
I feel like every time I've been talking to a teacher recently, it's like as soon as I say something, then there's a jinx that happens right after it if we discuss something. Oh, that hasn't happened yet. And then like within an hour. It just happened to me 2 days ago that someone was saying, I think things are going pretty good. I was in a meeting. Actually, I think you were in that same meeting. And then I had calls about an hour later. And I was like, I jinxed this myself. This is all my doing.
Yeah, you have to know when you're on the mountaintop that there's a valley on the other side. But conversely,
sure.
when there's a valley, there is a mountaintop on either side of you. So
this is true. You got very pastory right there. I very much like that.
Those are just life lessons with Jeremy today.
I like it. I think that's a great idea for a podcast. I'm just going to shut off my mic and let you preach for a while. This is good. I'm here for it.
Oh my gosh. So today's topic actually is what does it mean kind of to be a musician, and like what does it mean when you're not a professional musician? And part of this comes out of the fact that this is my last year as a for now, I think, maybe, I don't know, but my last year as a music teacher in a school system, which is kind of really wild to me, and why also the end of the year is even weirder and more settled, because I don't even have to think about next year at all, which is pretty nice to think about, like planning curriculums or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Have you found it to be weird? Yeah. Have you hit that weird spot? Yeah. Because I got to imagine that after you've done this for so long and you're taking a different trajectory, that while you're sitting here waiting to go down the new path, you're starting to look back at the new path, but not understand the path coming forward.
Yeah, that's pretty pastoral of you as well.
Well, thank you. I tapped into you. I did. I tapped into your spirit, I guess. Maybe we're both feeling preachy today.
Maybe. Well, I'll tell you, it's weird because I think teaching is one of those jobs where you have a set schedule and you have a set path, right? Like you could be an absolutely terrible teacher and still show up to the same amount of days, have the same amount of students, and be okay. Like you'll get a paycheck and you don't have to like grow yourself beyond much of what you are currently. Or you could be like a really stellar teacher and really try to grow and have a growth mindset and learn the best techniques. And either one of those, you're beholden to the system in a way. Like there's bounds of what you can do either way. Like you could be really bad, but you can't be like so bad. And you could be really good, but you can't like go beyond because then you're too far out there for people. So you have these walls that you're beholden to, and this transition out is it's freeing in a way because I'm not beholden to that anymore. And it got me to thinking about like a musician as like what boundaries have I put on myself as a musician, and like what boundaries do I keep myself into? And so that's been kind of a cool transition as well. Like a lot of stuff that I'm doing now outside of teaching is I'm doing it. I'm creating or I'm doing things, and it's weird because it feels almost like the shackles have been taken off, which is weird to say, because in my last 3 years, at least 4 years of teaching music, I have really tried to be better. Like, I resolved to myself a few years ago, like, I'm going to be the best music teacher in this environment that I can be. So that's been a lot of fun to like grow in that way. And partly the reason this podcast exists is because of that, right?
Have we ever told the story how you kind of got guilted into doing the podcast? Have we ever told that story on the here?
I don't know.
This might be a great time to actually do it if you're comfortable doing it.
Yeah. So we're talking about growth mindset, right? So I love podcasts. I love talking. Obviously, if you ever listen to us, you know that I like to talk and hear my own voice. And I had this idea that I wanted to start a podcast for enrichment. I wanted kids, well, not enrichment quite, but I wanted kids to have a different opportunity to hear the same material presented, especially when you could listen to a podcast at 2 times the speed. Because my brain, I like to listen to things fast, especially like if it's by myself, which a lot of times when you are in a virtual environment, you're by yourself, right? Like, I'm not in a classroom full of people that I can interact with. I'm in a classroom watching a screen. And so I just want the information most of the time. And so I wanted to present this, and I had this idea to create a podcast that followed our class. I said, okay, so for every class we have, we're going to have a podcast episode. And I forget, Daphne, if you were in earlier than the professional development or afterwards.
I was at the professional development when you got the question. Okay. I was sitting by you.
So you were sitting by me. So what happens is I had this idea, and we were sitting in this big session with this education guru. I don't remember her name. I think she's from Baltimore or Boston or something. But she asked people to write goals for themselves, or SMART goals. I forget what all the letters mean, but basically achievable goals within a set time frame that you can actually do. And so I shared my vision of creating this podcast. She made me like put a timestamp on it, which was the beginning of that year, essentially. And that was it. So we had like made a promise. She probably has no idea who I am anymore, and I obviously don't remember her name. But my promise was to create a podcast at least once a week that outlined our class for students to be able to listen to. And out of that, Daphne came on board. She expressed interest in making this happen. And so we started making a podcast. And for 2 years, we made a podcast called the Ohio Virtual Academy Music Appreciation Podcast. It's not a sexy name by any stretch of the imagination, but that's because it was just the name of our class,
right.
And the first year was just our class. So if we taught about Baroque era composers, we did a podcast on Baroque era composers. And what started to evolve out of that actually was Daphne and I discovered we just liked going deeper about some of the stuff, one, we didn't get to talk about in class because there wasn't enough time to cover it, or different aspects of something that wasn't covered at all in any of our readings. So like doing a 2-episode podcast on Bach, right? We talk like maybe there's like 2 pages of Bach in there, but we did 2 episodes or whatever. And so we did that for a year. The second year, we decided to like switch to enrichment, which is we wanted to be able to explore music more. And so we invited different guests on. We started covering different instruments and different bands and eras of music, and we decided, like, we just did that for the school year, and then after that we talked about it and said, we actually like doing this, for even if nobody else listens, we just like to talk about music. It's like a bright spot in our week. So we decided to shut that one down so it was separate from the school, and maybe that was like a divine sign that we were shutting down the Music Appreciation Podcast and relaunching All Things Music. And that's where we're at now, 14 episodes in to this new title. But basically it's the genesis is from wanting to be a better teacher to provide new opportunities for my students that Daphne decided to come along the ride for, and now is, we're co-hosts. So that's the story.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think we've ever shared how that really started, being in that professional development session many eons ago now. Boy, it feels like a long time ago. Just especially because, what we've lived through since that time. But I think, and you have often joked, maybe you've said this to me more privately than publicly, but you've often joked, yeah, we do the podcast because I got guilted into it. Like you say stuff like that because you're like, I got called out at the PD, but that is what happened. But it doesn't negate the fact that this started from a place that was hoping to grow young musicians or maybe just young students who were learning about it. And I think that kind of demonstrates that growth mindset that teachers should have anyway, that, that trying to grow and especially, and musicians too. I think we're in that kind of interesting place where we double dip a little bit, one toe's in education and one toe's in musicianship all the time. And so that's where, the podcast became a nice place for you to do both of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. It stretched me. It made me better. It made me think about what is interesting to talk about in music. And I think it gave us the freedom to just, create something that wasn't with much regards to teaching. We got to teach music and talk about music without having to think about the standards or having to think about what students were going to learn from it, or we didn't have to think about what assignment am I going to use to judge whether or not somebody has understood what I've taught. That all that stuff was out the window, and that was very nice. It was almost spoiled that we could just talk about music and not have to worry about being a teacher as a professional.
Right.
So,
yeah, it was kind of a nice thing about it. Yep.
So, yeah, and so here we are. And the nice thing, even though I'm leaving teaching as a profession right now, I am always a teacher at heart. So we'll get to keep making this podcast and just keep sharing music, which is cool. So we're talking about now, what does it mean to be a musician outside of the world that we know as a professional, quote unquote, college educated musician, professional. And I guess that goes into the first question is when I say the word musician or somebody says it, what do you think of? What's the image that comes to your mind?
I think for me personally, just because this is my career path, I do see professional musicianship because I'm living it every day. Now, I'm not saying I'm a professional musician, but I'm surrounded with that concept. It's always in my face every day because of being a music teacher. But I don't think that is reasonable or accurate, to be honest, about my evaluation, because there's so much more to musicianship or being a musician than doing it as a job. You don't have to do music as a job to be a musician. I know many people who do it as a hobby or do it as something they just do to kind of get away from the stress of the world. And they're no less musicians than any of the people getting paid to do the same thing. So I think I think to be quite frank and to be just throw myself in front of the bus here, I think my view is very narrow because of what I do. So, but that doesn't mean that you can't be a musician outside of it being a career, for sure. For absolutely sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I notice myself as a music snob and snobbery all the time, and I'm pretty quick to recognize it most of the time. And part of that is just, we spent multiple years in a professional setting, spending a lot of money to study a very certain type of music. And part of the therapeutic part of this podcast, to be quite honest, is just kind of dismantling some of those ideas of what is a musician or what is professional and what is the right type of music. And we've covered a lot of those topics, but I am with you. I think of the first image probably that comes to mind is a tuxedo and in an orchestra,
Definitely. That's almost verbatim what I was thinking of. And again, that's partly due to my part-time job.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Full-time, part-time, full-time orchestra director or coordinator.
Because I work part-time with a professional symphony in the education department. Whatever you want to call me there, I have a title there, but you know what I mean. I'm a catch-all. Let's be real. But because of that, I do have this, because it's so aligned with what I do all the time. It's hard for my brain and wrongfully so. I do want to stress that. I think it's wrongfully so that my brain doesn't want to expand to other types of musicianship, because for crying out loud, music is for everybody. You don't have to be that person on the stage. And so even I have to check my bias. I don't know if that's really a bias, but I don't know how else to say it. I think that's the only way I can.
Yeah, I had a friend who played guitar, very, very good guitarist. And I remember one time we were in like elementary or middle school or something, and I was talking to him about a major scale, like music nerds do. And I forget why it even came up. And he said, and you had to go to like band class to learn that. And I was like, oh man, I guess I didn't have to, because he learned it by teaching himself guitar or like taking lessons or whatever. And I was like, that's so fascinating. And I think that there's like this weird world, and this is my view coming in as a music teacher, is it seems like there's this weird view in my mind of student, there's like student, teacher, and professional. And there's like nothing really else, right? And that's just a very black and white and gray way of looking at it, I guess. Like you either are learning an instrument as a child or a beginner, or you're teaching other people the instrument. I think of like guitar teachers in this realm, or you're making money from it. And I think what you had alluded to is there are a lot of people that just are playing for fun. In fact, there's a group over here at the VFW in Dallas that meets every Sunday, and they sit around a table and they go around, and there's like teachers, a principal, some other like part-time gigging musicians, like an artist, and they just like call out songs and they play for like 4 hours. You know what I mean? And none of them are professional. Some of them like probably gig in the evenings, but none of them are like supporting themselves as a musician.
Right.
And so they're all musicians. And I think I am excited that I kind of am stepping out of this professional role to just kind of let it go a little bit, to just be out there, as be a trained musician.
I kind of wonder how much, I'm trying to think of the right word. If a person feels more free being a professional musician or a not professional musician, meaning, when you're getting paid to play a gig or something, there's a certain expectation. Generally, you're going to play this type of music or these songs for this long. There's some kind of expectation already built in, for service reward. Okay, fine. If you're doing it just for fun, does that kind of free you up to do more of the things you like, to play more of the music you like, to study the type of music you like? I'd be curious to know what people thought about that, because as somebody in the profession, I think I lean more, obviously, I am paid to do a specific service. I've been hired for those gigs. Whereas the people at the VFW that you were talking about are just there to have a good time. And so I wonder which one feels better. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but you know what I mean? Like, or might feel more free, might feel more liberated. I'm guessing the latter.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I bet a lot of it depends on your personality, where like some people will find tons of freedom in sitting down and studying a score written by Beethoven, right? And like they will find all the connection they need and all the freedom they need to express themselves in that music. And that's probably super stifling to other people, whereas other people can sit down with a pentatonic scale in a room full of people and experiment the crap out of their instrument and feel like they can express everything they can express. So I think it really does probably like knowing who you are as a person. I feel like right now where I am at is that I am ready to not like be beholden to the rules. Like I'm ready to study, not that I couldn't be studying other music right now. And part of this too, I guess this has been kind of a long journey because I moved to Dallas, and when I was in Toledo, before I moved here, I was also doing music like for the church. So like I did teaching music, and then I did every Sunday I led music at the church. So like I was in music a lot. I was playing a lot of music. I had a lot of fun creating in that way, even though they were like songs that everybody knew. There was a lot of fun in creating that way and like refining and making that perfect. And now like I don't do that anymore, and I'm leaving teaching. So all the musical outlets I have now will be dependent on me, which is a ton of fun, that I can just sit down with my guitar next to me and experiment with different sounds. And I think part of it is trusting, and this is, I think, what I'm saying, a personal journey for everybody. Where I get to be now is I get to trust that I can experiment with different sounds and know that I have the confidence to be able to make the sounds that I want to, or be able to discover the sounds that I want to. Like I know the language of music, right? I know how music works. So now I can just go out and like converse with it instead of studying it and teaching it more. Now I get to go use it however I see fit. And that is pretty fun, I think, for me where I'm at.
Well, that kind of you'll be the interesting case study then, because you're going to be the person who's going from it in a more formalized way, going into a less formal setting, and we'll have to see which one you think you like better, or if there's reasons why you like one versus the other. And the other side of that too is we're about to find out how intrinsically motivated you are in that regard, because you're not doing it as your 9 to 5. So okay, well, if you want to keep music alive, then you'll be the one relying on yourself, as you said, to find those opportunities in how you see fit. So now I say that knowing that you have plenty of intrinsic motivation. That's not going to be an issue for you. But for other people, it could be a problem for them to try and find the motivation to do it on their own. I think that would be a challenge.
Yeah, I think it'll be, it can be how intrinsically motivated to, and how far do you want to go? Because, like I know that if I want to sit down and learn some jazz, I'm going to have to spend time actually learning. Like, I'm going to have to study for real. You know what I mean? It's like, am I going to be comfortable learning something new and putting the work into it? Or am I going to just be happy with what I know now? And right now, it doesn't really matter to me. That's kind of what's nice about it, is I don't really care either way which one it is. I'm just having fun. And I am like not worried about what I have to perform for the next gig or the next class. And that's cool. That's a cool feeling to be in. Like I could just go jam if I want to on Sundays. Or the biggest thing I will have to do, actually, I know for me, intrinsically motivated, is I'll have to be around other people. I'll have to be collaborative in some form. And that's why this podcast works so well, because we're collaborative.
Yeah.
So I'll have to collaborate with other people. And that's how, if you're a musician, you should be collaborating. I know we have a lot of bedroom producers nowadays, but I think to be better, most of the time you have to be around people who are better than you. I think there's a myth a lot of times where like we have these amazing YouTubers out there that are just so talented, and they're by themselves in their bedroom producing like these huge, like Jacob Collier, right? I think of him, and like he did the NPR Tiny Desk concert during COVID, and he recorded himself, and he did it like he did every instrument for 15 minutes. He did like a concert, but he did every instrument, and there's like 6 of them. So that means he recorded all the parts 6 times for 15 minutes each. You know what I mean? It's like there are these, and he's so good, but he's an outlier. But he gets millions and millions of views on YouTube, so people are going to think that's what a musician is, and they're going to lose out on the collaborative aspect of it. So that's what I'll need. I'll need the collaborative aspect, because I can experiment with sounds and I can have fun, and I have done that. Like I made a little ditty off of the blinker on my car, right? So like I got that going in the system right now.
Wait, back up, stop.
Yeah.
So you recorded the blinker, your turn signal in your car?
The blinker inspired me in the sound and the percussion rhythm that I wrote out. And then I just kind of built off of there. So
awesome. That is very 20th century of you right there. Holy cow. Holy cow. All right, Philip Glass. I can't wait to hear what it is you produce.
And that's so like I'll try to play it for other people, and like my goal is to really put myself out there as like to really like be vulnerable in that aspect, right? Because teaching is we can be vulnerable, but they're still kids. You know what I mean? Like I can play my songs, or I can sing, and I sing a lot in my class, play guitar, but like the kids are impressed that I can play a very, very basic 12-bar blues on the piano, and that's 3 chords. You know what I mean? Like that sounds so good, and like that makes me feel good. But I also know that like what I'm playing is not a difficult thing to play for a musician. So now I get to experiment. And I've been listening to like a lot of pop music too, and saying like, how does like The Weeknd think about this synth line? You know, like why does he pick bum bum ba da dum bum bum? You know, like why does that come out? Like how does he get the sound? Like why do you think to put like this little weird chime thing in the background? Like that's the stuff I'm having fun dissecting, and that actually comes from being a better teacher, because we did an active listening lesson with "Take on Me" by Weezer, a cover of Aha's "Take on Me," and like teaching active listening, which is something we never really did before, or did well, I don't think, and we did it 2 years now. And that's like made me a better musician. So I'm going to take that, what I taught these kids, I taught myself, and I'm going to go out and be a better musician for it.
That's interesting. First of all, I hope that when you feel comfortable, maybe we can put some of that on here so people can hear some of your creativity. If you're feeling good about that.
I'll start writing the intro music.
Oh, nice. The other thing I was thinking is, you know, you obviously have training to be a musician. So one of the questions you posed here was, what kind of training do you need to have to be a musician? And we talked a little bit about this, but like we have training for, collegiate level training because of what we did, but not everybody does that. We know so many people who, you know, do the bedroom music thing, right? And do that just because they've learned on the spot. So I wanted to point out that, you know, just because, you know, you've got all that training, which is awesome, and you're clearly going to put it to work, you don't necessarily have to have some kind of big formal training to do it. These skills we're talking about can be picked up, although you should consult a professional when you have questions, because what you don't want is, you know, to try and learn off any Joe Schmo YouTube thing and think that automatically means you're doing everything right. That's a different thing.
Yeah. I wish I should have written this down, but I was driving. I listened to an NPR thing about this guy who plays a specific instrument that's from Africa, a country in Africa, I believe. And it's kind of like a vibraphone, but it's something different, but very similar. Anyways, the instrument, I don't know.
And not doesn't ring a bell. Not the Mbira either. Sorry, I'm going
that one? I don't know.
It's the thumb piano, but moving on. I don't think that's what
I don't think so.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah, no, it's fine. That's good. They had that instrument in their family. This family specifically had their instrument for 800 years.
Oh my God.
You know, like they were the keeper of the music and the stories and all that of their particular tribe or wherever they were from. And that just struck me. And because he's like, you know, America's only really been around for 400 years, and that includes like pre-Declaration of Independence. So like this family has been playing music for 800 years. And I was like, wow, like they didn't need any college training. And they get hired out for weddings, you know, like because it's important to their culture. And like they don't have any collegiate training that we really know of, or they didn't highlight it. And like that's just passed down. And then I was thinking of like Appalachia and like all the instruments that are passed down through there. And there's tons of people in the Army that just taught themselves how to play like guitar or banjo and bass. And a lot of it is like if you're around a musical family, that helps a ton. That's how I got started, at least. You know, like all my family were musicians for the most part. So then I just had like the tools, whatever tools I got, to make me into the musician that I am today. And so, yeah, like you're saying, you got YouTube now. You're so lucky. I mean, if you're listening now, you can learn anything on the internet, and well too. You know what I mean? Like it used to be the Wild West, but you can learn anything well on the internet now. So YouTube, you got Skype lessons. Sorry, Skype is so out now. That was so 2008. Zoom lessons.
Skype type. I haven't heard that word in a minute. That's hilarious.
I couldn't even think of the ringtone. I should bring it back and bring some nostalgia.
First of all, yes. And secondly, we're recording on one of those two right now.
Yeah,
and you still didn't say the right one? Way to go, old timer. Oh,
I am old. Yeah. Oh. So then you got like box stores, Guitar Center, they have whole rooms dedicated to lessons. So like I watch half my YouTube feed right now is probably like drum videos. I don't have a drum set, and I'm an okay drum set player. Like I can keep a beat and probably play in a rock band. But like I don't play drums, but I just watch videos and I learn. You know what I mean? Like I just absorb it all. It's just kind of crazy how you can learn, and then just get around other people who will teach you. That's the blues and jazz. Like those traditions are very much find a mentor, and learn how to play an instrument. So,
yeah, I think I've talked a lot about New Orleans, that I want to go for that reason. Like I want to go make friends with musicians just so I can learn from them. I just want to go have a new best friend in New Orleans. So look out, Nola. I'm coming.
There's have you seen the series on YouTube called Daryl's House from Hall & Oates? Daryl, is it Daryl Hall? I don't remember which one is which, but
I think so. I think you're saying it right.
Yeah. So either way, Daryl's house, he has this cabin or whatever, and he brings these famous musicians. I think the SNL drummer is one of them. He has like this core group of musicians, and they come in, and he brings like a famous person in. So like I got hip to him because I was watching Tommy Shaw from Styx. Mm-hmm. He like came in, and so what they do then is the band learns some of their songs, and then whoever's coming in will like learn some of their songs, I guess, and they'll just like jam. And they're all these professional musicians, and they're just like jamming together. And I remember Tommy Shaw, who's like pretty, he's part of the band Styx, which did a whole episode on, pretty well versed in how to play music. And I remember listening, he's just like, kind of said a thing in passing. Daryl was like, hey, the chords or whatever the lick is on the screen. And Tommy says, well, I don't know, like I don't like use chords or whatever. Like I don't really know what I'm looking at. And I was like, this dude, like, who knows if he's lying, but I can't. It was like said just in such passing that like he's been around for 80 years, 70 years. And this joker is like a rock band, multi-platinum selling, arena tour selling out musician of like a super group in the damn Yankees, Sean Blade, Styx, and like he doesn't use chords. And like that was just such a foreign concept to me for a second. But like you couldn't be any more like, I wonder where he learned. He played in like the bowling alleys in the South. So he probably just picked up a guitar and started fiddling around with it, which is fascinating to me. So you can teach yourself even. That's
unreal. Like all those things, not using chord stuff, that blows my head up. And again, but that's because my trajectory being a musician is so much different than that. And yours too for the most part, but it would like hurt our brain to think about somebody who's not following some kind of chord progression, or it would hurt my brain, and it in fact does. but obviously it works. Obviously it works, and you can be successful.
I'm a part of this guitar group on Facebook, which you know how that goes sometimes, and they always get in these debates about modes. Modes is like a hot topic in guitar playing, and how long did you study modes for in college? Do you remember?
Not long. It would have been like mid. I feel like it was the middle of Theory 1 for like a couple weeks, maybe.
Yeah, and I don't know if we did it in Theory 1. We for sure talked about it for like 1 or 2 classes in music history, early music history.
Oh, I guess we did talk about it in history. Okay, yeah, you're right.
That was about it. But like these guitar players will take it to the extreme. Like you are not a real guitar player unless you can play all the modes and know exactly where they go at all times. And I don't know. That's just like that's this core group of guitar players distinctive, right? That is what makes them. But then, God forbid, you talk about using a tab, right? And so it's just interesting. We all have these like shortcuts that we have learned from whoever has taught us. So like for you and I, chords, right? Like chord progression. That is just the basis of everything we do for the most part. And a guitar player would say, no, you need the modes. and then you'll be a real guitar player. And we're like, no, you need to know how to read figured bass and do a Western musical harmony to be a real musician. And then a drummer's like, you just need to hit the right things at the right time to be a real musician. And then like a jazz player might say, you need to be able to play an extended 13th chord with a flat 5 and a sharp 7 to be a real jazz. And like,
Holy
we just
cow.
all have these things, right? We all have these things that like are important to us in the style of music that we play, that we learn from whoever has taught us. So then when we get threatened, if you will, by other styles of music or other ideas, we're like, no, you're not a real musician.
That always bugs me. I don't love, I'm trying to think how to say it. I don't love this idea that certain things are qualifiers to be a musician, because I think it's a little to each his own. Music is subjective, so why are we objectively trying to force a player into a box? If we don't necessarily do that with music, why would we do that with the person? You know what I mean?
Amen.
Like,
Amen.
Now, there are things as a person who has studied things for years that will annoy me. The thing that comes to mind is like, as a percussionist, there are certain elements of people's grips that will just drive me up a wall. If I look at their hands and I perceive that it is not a proper grip or something, that will make me twitchy. I won't lie about it. But I don't think that just disqualifies them as a musician because they don't hold their stick a certain way. Get out of here with that. That doesn't, to me, that just seems like a dumb argument.
There's a drum channel called Drumeo on YouTube. It's they bring in tons of famous musicians and famous drummers, right? And they give lessons. And it's so funny because there's Todd Zuckerman, who's a drummer for Styx right now, but much more than that, gives a lesson. And then like I watched a video from another guy who like says basically exact opposite of like where to hit the hi-hat at, right? And people are like tearing him up in the comments. And I'm just thinking like, this joker's on Drumeo, you know, like a very famous rock drummer, right? And his technique is exactly opposite of what Todd said. And Todd's a very famous, accomplished drummer, but he also has his own style. And so, like you're talking about, like these little things that people will, and especially with amateur musicians, well, I guess anybody with a fixed mindset. It goes back to that fixed versus growth mindset.
Yeah, I think it does. You're right.
Anybody with the fixed mindset about this is the only way to play an instrument because this is the way that I was taught and my teacher was the best teacher ever, then that, you know, everybody else sucks. And that is, I mean, we're all victims of that.
Oh, totally.
All the time.
I make fun of Squidward all the time, but he is doing it wrong. Let's just, I mean, now what, see, I just went back on my own word. But it's also preference too. Like, this just made me think of, I had a virtual lunch with a former student last week, and he's now currently a percussion performance and music ed major at a university here in Ohio. And we were discussing what brand of triangle we like. And he said one, and I said, well, have you checked out this one? He's like, oh, I don't like that one. I don't think it's great, and I know my professor doesn't like it. And I said, well, it's like food, right? Like we all have our own tastes of what we like and stuff, and maybe none of them are really wrong or right. It's just a taste thing, and I think that kind of applies here too. That you know.
I mean, think about just like even like a Pizza Hut versus Domino's versus Papa John's, right? I mean, like even the same type of food, people will love it. I always make fun of, there's a place in Lima, if you're close to it, called Kewpie, and it's like in the Wendy's lineage somewhere. I think it's so bad. But if you're from there, like that is God's gift to hamburgers, and it's so bad. But people love it.
You're going to get the comments are going to be unkind to you this week, I think.
Right. Who am I to steal their joy? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
There's so many other things in this world to worry about that I don't care what hamburger you eat. And same way, like, there's so many things to worry about. Like, if you decide to use a 5A drumstick instead of a 5B or whatever they are, you know, like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And now some people will get really, and of course there's different things, like if you're going to hurt yourself, if you're going to injure yourself, then you might want to look at that. But
yeah, which is my problem with Squidward. I would just like to go back to this for a second. He's going to hurt his teeth holding his clarinet that way. And I'm just going to point there that that's what I'm saying. Squidward, get it right. Okay. Come on now. I have feelings
Fix yourself.
about it. Fix yourself, Squidward.
God.
Fix yourself. I have feelings about
Oh
it.
gosh. So what do you do when you're not a musician? Like, have you ever thought about like what would you do with your life if you walked away from music? Like when you out of the professional realm of music.
Like what would my other career be?
No, what would you? Well, maybe, but what would you do to kill? Like, what would you do to keep the music alive? Like, what would you do to stay practicing?
Well, I think I'd have more time to practice if I wasn't in the field. Weirdly enough, I feel like I don't pick up my drumsticks nearly as much as I wish I did. But I think if I was to leave the field but still wanted music to be a part of my life, I'd be going to a lot more live concerts because I think there's something about the experience of seeing people live playing music that's really important. And I do kind of mean sincerely, I would probably practice, maybe not more, but definitely differently. Sometimes when you do this all day, it feels like another thing on your task list when you have to practice. Whereas if you, it was, you were doing IT work all day and then had 30 minutes to hack out a drum solo, it probably wouldn't feel as connected to your job. So I know I said that in jest, but I think I would at least practice differently, if not more. But I think outside of that, just going to live concerts would be a big deal for me personally. And that's one of the ways I'd, do the whole, keep it alive in my life things.
Yeah. I think there's a lot more. I think it's true with any creative pursuit and we've talked about this in the college episode, like you really, really, really have to want it if you want to make it a career, and you really have to find the joy in practicing and finding like the joy in the performance. Because a lot of the time you don't spend performing for other people, or I think like when I was leading music at the church, like there'd be moments while we were practicing that were so good, I'd be like, whatever that was that you just did was awesome. Like I just smile, like because I'd have to enjoy that moment because and I knew in like 10 seconds we'd be stopping to fix something. So being present in that moment and I think it's maybe I'm looking at this as like a sabbatical, from music.
Yeah,
so,
I feel like that's a better term for you at this point. Your sabbaticaling. Can you make it for me?
I like it. I'm going to go with it.
I like it. You're on sabbatical. I very much like this.
I wonder too, like, we have the music teachers have the summer. I mean, roughly have the summer to rest and recuperate. But like, if you're talking about sabbatical, you got to get right back into it. So like, you don't get a chance to like rest and then be like, oh, I'm going to be creative because you got to get right back into teaching.
Well, I think the hard part when you're talking about that in particular, I struggle there personally. I can speak to that from personal experience because when we get to this point in the year in about a week or so, I'm going to shut off. I will because I'm tired. It's not because I don't love what I do. I'm just tired. And so a lot of and at our school, I will say in particular, we don't have quite as long as summers as some other people or some other schools do. We have a little bit more finite time. So I make it a rule in my universe to actually shut off. That doesn't mean I don't practice for exactly, you know what I mean? Like I'll still pick up my drumsticks and I keep meaning to pick up that ukulele, this beautiful ukulele that I purchased. And start strumming around on it. But there is a point where I'm just like, I can't be creative or pursue any higher goals right now because everything is pudding, like in my head. I think I was saying that to you earlier, like my brain's pudding. And so I think that complicates things a little bit too. You have to find the balance. But when you're talking about summers, that's what's making me think about that.
Well, that's interesting. I had a thought while you're saying that of like how in a lot of ways, musicians kind of have to be selfish in a way, because I was thinking like why do our brains turn to mush? Well, it's because, again, I think we were talking about this before, like you're worried about so many other people and what they're doing with their lives. Like we're worried about people passing. We're worried about people achieving what we ask them to achieve. We're worried about people like people who are good. Like we just ourselves added an advanced theory course, right, to our class. So we're worried about like, can we grow the kids that have the potential to grow more than what we have been doing in the past? Like for next year, we're already planning. Well, not we. You're already planning for kids' curriculums next year. You know what I mean? So like when it comes time to be selfish, like you want to rest.
Oh, I dig in.
You don't have time to. Yeah, you don't have time to practice.
Yeah, because it's just we're tired, and it's not because we don't love it or anything like that. But I also know that the best version of myself, I'll just use me as the example. The best version of myself in August is the version that's had rest, because there's too many things to worry about. Not to mention, we're just talking about professional stuff. I have personal stuff going on right now, like everybody. Well, and everybody does, right? Like for example, and this is a great segue into my plug because I keep meaning to do this. This weekend, I'm involved in a charity event, a charity marathon over Memorial Day, and I have been for years to raise money for Feeding America. Well, I'm one of the people that's organizing that, so I've got a lot of stuff going on there. So I've got, both the professional and personal stuff going on, and you do just become pudding. And then guess what happens when you're a musician? Oh, I'm a little too tired to practice. Oh, I can pick up the drumsticks later. It's not uncommon. I'm not alone in that. I am sure that listeners who are musicians can absolutely relate.
Yeah, especially if there's no performance to go to. Right. I think of athletes. I think of like the analogy I had in my head is like a professional athlete who stops performing, or a college athlete and just stops because they're done playing games. They just, they get out of shape sometimes.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of think there's no performance to work towards. Like, it is good to have intrinsic motivation, but it's also really, really effective to have, something external that is going to judge you, if you're good or not, or people are paying you to be at a performance or not. So
you're 100% correct on that. I mean, and that's a topic for another different day, intrinsic versus external motivation. If we ever had the answers to that, boy, we'd make hand over fist.
So much money.
So much money. It'd be ridiculous.
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, I think that's probably a good spot to stop. What do you think?
Yeah. Because as forementioned, my brain is pudding. So, yeah, I will go ahead and pump one more time if anybody is interested. I am in a fundraiser this weekend to raise funds for Feeding America. It'll be on Twitch Online. Maybe we can link that in the podcast notes. I think we do every year. This is our third annual event, and we're hoping to raise a lot of money. So if you hear this before Memorial Day weekend, stop by and check us out and give money to those who need it. We'll be on Twitch playing games for Feeding America. So come on in. You can see me make a fool of myself and throw money at a good cause. It'll be great.
Oh, my gosh. Dude. That's awesome. Yeah, I look forward to it. I'm going to check it out. Well, I hope so, because I'll be out camping this weekend.
Oh, that sounds fun, though. Well, maybe.
Well, we'll see.
Well, with children, maybe. Maybe that's different. But hopefully you'll have a good time. But if you need a break, we'll be on Twitch, and you can watch us play some old school games and be ridiculous, all for a good cause. So anybody who wants to stop by. Say hi if you're in the chat. Stop by and tell me you're listening to the podcast, and give some money to Feeding America, because there's a lot of folks who need some help right now, and we want to try and do what we can to share the blessings with who we can. So
awesome. Well, good. So you can find that in our show notes. You can go to our website at allthingsmusicpodcast.com, or you can email us at contact@allthingsmusicpodcast.com for information about that or conversations about anything else. And we will talk to you later.
Bye, everybody.